Welcome to Research Insights with Elite Mind. So, those are our weekly live conversations where we cover a variety of topics from organizational well-being industry that often stay behind the closed doors. And today, I'd like to talk about the role of leadership in staff well-being and productivity. Now, this topic comes up very often as these core areas and core drivers in our work that we do, helping companies to establish better operational processes and improve employee well-being. And there is a lot of uncertainty, I would say, around what leaders and managers, line managers, are supposed to be doing for their staff well-being, and where are those boundaries, and how much we're supposed to be pushing, how much it is responsibility of each individual, how much it is responsibility of organization and those leaders and managers, and maybe where is the boundary where actually we should say, this is beyond my area of expertise, and we should be sending or referring people to some specialist support and advice. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in. Welcome. Please do say hello in a chat and let me know if you have any comments, questions, suggestions. So question for you. So what do you feel is the role of leadership in staff well-being and productivity? And what are all of the different factors that affect the quality of that leadership? And when we do our research, we can really see that a lot of employees are judging their entire experience with the business based on their relationship and the clarity of direction that they get from their line manager, right? So we survey and interview all of our employees, and then we realize that, sometimes the feedback looks like it's feedback from a different company. Hello, Simon. Hello, EG. Hi, Nazir. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts as well about, the role of leadership in well-being and productivity, and to what extent do you feel it's the driver, and to what extent it can be a limitation in those areas. So yeah, like I was saying, when we look at the feedback from different departments that are led by different leaders, sometimes we compare that and it looks like it's completely different companies that these people are working at, where in reality the difference is that they're reporting to different leaders who are then creating completely different sense of safety, who give employees a different set of direction, who are supporting employees more or less. And this is always kind of an issue of alignment, right? Do we have the same processes? Do we have the same procedures in organization? Do managers receive training so they know exactly how to support their employees? Do they know exactly how to drive them towards the same organizational targets, right? And if we don't have those set up at organizational level, then we end up having those huge variances across departments, across different teams, across different leaders that are representing those different departments. And that, of course, then results in unfairness in organization, right? Because those processes are not equal, and there are no benchmarks and comparisons for who gets promoted, who gets supported, who receives specific, benefits and rewards and so on. And it becomes very subjective based on that individual leader expertise. So I think based on those examples that we're seeing, the role of leadership is key in everything, right? In building that culture, in supporting employees, in driving the change, in embedding any support structure and infrastructure, creating behaviors for inclusion, for creativity, freedom to express themselves for who we are. Leaders can play a huge role in creating that. Yeah, absolutely, Nazir. For long-term success, mental well-being is crucial and important part of a leadership skill. And yet, when we build on that comment, when you think about well-being as a leadership skill, what do we exactly mean, right? And there are different ways of looking at this, right? First of all, is to what degree you can maintain your own health and well-being. Then, how can you provide for well-being of your employees? And how can you also maintain well-being and resilience at the organizational business level, right? So in a way, when we are delivering leadership training, we are structuring it in those three categories. So there is self-leadership, there's leading self, there's leading others, and there's leading the business. And those are all very different skills that are required, right? And we have to start with ourselves, because if we don't know what we don't know, if we cannot manage our own time, our own level of stress, our own priorities, then that spills over in how we then relate to others and how we lead and manage other people. Because very often we lead by example, but also the moment we become overwhelmed, stressed, and not managing our own workload and tasks and our own emotional resilience, that makes us very less empathetic, right? We don't have anymore that capacity where we are able to see work-life perspectives from other people's shoes, essentially, right? From their point of view, from their perspective. So it's so important that we start with ourselves before we then learn how to lead others. And only then we are able to see how together, the way I operate and lead myself, how I lead other people, that we can contribute to the wider, bigger organizational objectives. And this is about understanding your company's vision, mission, and strategy. How do we communicate? How do we bring that alignment? How do we drive performance? How do we manage products and projects and sales processes and build relationships with different stakeholders internally and externally, right? So there's all these very different skills. And actually, it's a combination of those things that will then result in good well-being, right? At individual and organizational level. Chris says that leaders need to practice well-being for themselves first, and to establish processes and a culture around well-being and psychological safety into all parts of the company. Absolutely. It's so crucial that well-being is not, well-being in itself. I don't think that it has to be kind of a tick box target, like, I need to achieve well-being. Well-being is a consequence. Well-being is a consequence of your operations, your training, your development aligned well, your inclusive culture, psychological safety at work, as you are mentioning. Well-being is an output of all of those things being placed at the right time in a right place, right? And of course, it is difficult for leaders when we think, it's a huge burden if you think that you're responsible for, not just your own well-being, not just for your own performance, but you are responsible for performance of the business. You are responsible for welfare of your people. How exactly do you do that? It's an art and science, right? Leadership is this art and science which sits in that relational space between individuals and the environment in which they operate. So leaders are those agents that constantly renegotiate that relationship between the business and the environment in which we operate and people and their needs. And I think that's probably the key for leaders as agents of that well-being, right? Because when we look at this, those two areas are constantly changing. So in our consulting work, the way we work with organizations, and this is something that personally from research point of view I've spent I don't know, probably 15, 16 years researching what shapes individual responses and individual levels of resilience in specific context, right? Because we often talk about, let's say, well-being and resilience as if it's some sort of set standard that it is what it is, right? But when you look at placing different individuals in specific context, then you know that you'll see that some people will grow and thrive and perform even better with the same challenges, where other people will end up stressed, depressed, not wanting to live, not wanting to work, not being able to perform, right? So what is the difference? What's the difference that makes the difference between how people respond in that environment? And the answer is really in that relationship, right? If you look at individual well-being, all of their background, all of their history, all of their upbringing, all of their mindset, belief systems, their values, the support infrastructure that they have in their life, their physical health, economic, social well-being, all of these other aspects, that's part of the individual well-being. But then they bring all of those aspects to work. And now you place that into this work environment, into this work container. And that work environment has its own conditions and criteria, right? How well do we support people? How do we communicate? How do we operate? What's our safety? What's our culture? What's our leadership? And there are so many factors within that structure of organization that then can shape that individual well-being. And another way around, when person brings all of their baggage in a way with their personal life into work environment, that will affect business performance, right? Your mindset, your beliefs, your ways of being, your ways of doing will either help that business or can harm it, right? So it's that the answer is never in one or the other. There's a lot of research that's being done, like the impact of mental illness on your performance, or the impact of occupational stress on someone's well-being. But it's never just this one directional simple line. The relations are ecosystemic, right? We always need to look at those two aspects. This is the individual, this is the environment in which it operates, but what is in between? What is happening in that relational space? How can we constantly monitor, and how can we constantly utilize that knowledge and data to then make the right decisions about what support do we need to provide for these individuals? How can we nurture them, and how can we support them to be their best? And how can we then build those environments that enable those processes, that create this circumstance for everyone to be their best where it matters the most, and that personal well-being translates to organizational performance? Sebastian, there's a note from you saying, perhaps have one checkbox, which is to include well-being as part of daily focus. Too many companies completely disregard this aspect and expect high performance from overworked, overwhelmed, stressed employees. Absolutely. I love this comment, because we see so much of the well-being initiatives as, here's your library of resources, this is your gym membership, this is your fruit bowl, this is your whatever that might be. There's this kind of like walking initiatives and so on. They are all nice initiatives and well-intended kind of, I would say, reward and recognition programs, right, that help people to build those healthy habits and behaviors. But if you are working in the toxic environment, that will not solve your problems. If you are going through menopause, your walking will not help your symptoms. If you are in abusive relationship, your beanbag at work will not fix that and not protect you from bullying and harassment and so on, right? And your shiny mindfulness app will not fix that toxic working culture, right? So it's so important that we draw the boundaries between what is the responsibility of the employer and what is the responsibility of the employee. And at the end of the day, those daily initiative of self-care, that's responsibility of the individual, right? Organization can provide access to them, but you can take a horse to the water, you cannot make them drink, kind of example, I think is very relevant here, because at the end of the day, it's those self-care mechanisms. We can provide the resources, and we still need to acknowledge that wellness as a self-care processes, that's responsibility of the individuals. So we cannot just bring those little initiatives, say, oh, if you stressed, let me just give you another training on resilience, or another stress workshop so you can continue working. We really need to look at what is happening in the business strategically, operationally. And when we are doing our consulting assessments, we're really looking at all the different areas of the business. We're looking at your training and development. We're looking at the support infrastructure. We're looking at culture and the environment. We are looking at governance and compliance, right? All of those things are shaping employee experience at work. And absolutely, the role of leadership is they're those agents that negotiate this relationship between people and the business. Now, here is a shocking statistic for you, and here's a question for those who are listening. How many people do you believe receive leadership training as a percentage? And the percentage varies for different sizes of the business. I've looked at SMEs. So, for example, companies of 50 to 250 employees, those small, medium enterprises, those size of the businesses, it's 98% of our economy, really, in terms of employment, pretty much. And only 15% of line managers and leaders have received any leadership training, and only 20% have received any direction for leading other people, for people management. So that's not even kind of wider leadership, just kind of people management processes, such as like performance and communication. So I thought those percentages are higher, and it's really, really shocking to know that other 80% or 85% of line managers are actually leading people and leading their businesses without having any prior training. And what is even worse, that when we look at how leaders and managers are being promoted into those leadership roles, that there is also no clear processes and clear kind of leadership targets that would allow us to identify the right people who would be good leaders. What does it mean to be a leader? And that is very different to being very good at the job that you do. And unfortunately, that's how people are being promoted. So many times, like, we work, for example, with, let's say, fertility clinic, right? And some embryologist who worked for her entire life in a lab with a microscope. Now, as the company is growing, one day she's been given a team to manage, and she has no idea what to do with that, right? So these are such a common examples where people who are experts in their domain are simply just being given a team without even having the broader understanding of what does it actually take to be a good leader, and who would be able to take that role to again, negotiate that contract between your business, your customers, and all of your staff that are then delivering on those objectives. So, yeah, if we look at kind of different kind of factors that affect that quality of leadership, then, I'd love for you to kind of imagine this kind of circular diagram with, in the middle, you have those individual skills, this individual capacity, the leadership skills and leadership capacity. Then around that, you have organizational structure. So you have all of your operational processes, you have your procedures, your organizational ways of working. And then around that, you have the wider social and economic context, and it's kind of the wider market in which the company operates. So the role of the leader is really to utilize their personal skills in a way that helps to then shape those structures and systems and ways of working at maximum contribution and value to the market, and adapt to these wider ecosystemic social challenges and so on that we are working in. So what needs to happen? What do you feel are some of those leadership skills that are currently missing that lead to employee health, well-being, and performance? What do you think? So for those who are listening, I'd love to hear some of those specific skills. So I know things like emotional intelligence, for example, is used very often, as I think it's definitely a key in our ability to kind of manage our own emotions and level of stress, but also to adapt to different situations and to be able to see other people's perspectives and to be able to adapt to their emotional states and make those right decisions and right responses based on these kind of emotional sensory acuity that depends on people around you and the situation around you. And I think that's probably one of the key areas that we need to build in our leaders. Some other skills would be communication skills. It's I think crucial, and there are a lot of areas that fall under the communication skills, right? So there are listening skills, for example, and just being able to support others and just hear others and hold that safe, psychologically safe space for them. But there is also things like performance management, setting your targets and setting KPIs. That is a very, very different skill set, and people usually struggle to do one or the other, another. Things like giving and receiving feedback. In terms of communication as well, you look at aspects such as negotiation skills, sales. You're looking at conflict resolution and negotiations, which is crucial, building different kind of partnerships and negotiating deals and so on. What is also very important is knowing how to support others in their personal life struggles. And as line managers, I know nowadays everyone is talking about well-being and mental health, and we need, mental health ambassadors, and we need mental health first aiders, and everyone should be able to have those conversations. But leaders should not be therapists, right? We need to draw those boundaries that you listen, but you are not responsible or accountable for, treating someone's depression or whatever that is that they're going through. It's about an enabling supportive environment for them so they can continue working, but also directing them to further expert supports so they can continue healing and continue performing and contributing in that way. Sebastian says understanding personality types, communication and behavioral styles. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to be able to understand different personalities and how to engage and how to adjust your leadership and communication style based on who you are speaking to. and also to be able to adapt your own leadership style to the situation and to the environment. So absolutely. And it's, there are a lot of myths around personality, and starting with introverted and extroverted to different kind of like Jungian styles of different personalities and so on. um, but in reality, we are much more fluid than that. We are able to adapt and adjust based on situations and circumstances, and to be able to wear those different hats and play those different personalities and adapt those different leadership and communication styles and kind of behavioral tactics even for different situations is a key. It's crucial for our resilience in kind of adapting to that environment, and to be able to drive change in the businesses in face of this really unpredictable, fast-paced, changing environment that we live in. So yeah, so we have um, emotional intelligence, we have communication skills, we have understanding personality types and leadership styles, and be able to adapt our behaviors to it. What else there? What else you believe are those crucial leadership skills that can help build well-being and performance at work? Right. So I think also the other very important aspect is trauma awareness. And this is not something that we often see included in any personal or leadership development programs. And trauma awareness is still missing, even for most first responders. Even GPs, for example, don't necessarily have that training unless they request it. So I think to be able to understand how different people respond to trauma, and therefore, if somebody has experienced some traumatic events in their past, when they will come to working environment, there will be a lot of potential environmental triggers and situations that can either support them and get the best out of them, or actually really hinder and trigger them. And unless we understand the neurobiology of trauma response and how we are shaped by our experiences and interactions, it's not possible for us to identify that that individual might need help, and that they, to kind of even justify and understand the reason why they respond to specific environments and specific situations in different ways. Some of the things that people are pointing out here: strategic thinking, mental fitness and emotional resilience, um, understanding self-saboteurs and outward triggers that bring out our self-saboteurs. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I kind of want to maybe build here, talking about this on the aspect of resilience, right? I think we often talk about resilience as if it's, this kind of mental fitness aspect of being able to thrive and cope with anything. But again, it's actually relational in response to the environment in which we operate, because you can place the most resilient person with the most positive growth mindset in a really toxic working environment, and there's only that far that they will be able to go until they end up burning out, stressed out, and still not being their best. And you can take the most vulnerable person with all baggage of history and past trauma and you name it, but you place them in a very supportive, very encouraging environment, and they will still thrive, and they will still be at their best regardless of all of their past baggage that they're carrying on, right? So I think when we talk about resilience, we have to always talk about this in a context of that environment. And like you mentioned here, Sebastian, some of those kind of saboteurs, some of those triggers, and understanding, what gets the best out of us and what is limiting us and what is triggering us into maybe some of those internal states that we are not being our best. It's really, really important to be able to understand that. Some other things that people are pointing out: um, leaders should have multiple skills. Business continuity skills, absolutely. When we talk about business continuity, here is always this paradox between how well am I able to maintain operational excellence on day-to-day basis here and now versus innovating, looking at the future, building the business, pivoting, making sure that we adjust the sense of direction where we are going. And doing those two things is actually quite difficult at the same time, and different people will have different strengths. Like, I know for myself, I'm always the one who's building 20-50 year plan ahead and setting that direction and always adjusting the course and readjusting my sails of where exactly we are sailing. But then my team doesn't always know what exactly we need to do tomorrow to get there, right? So I need to surround myself with other people who are very strong operationally, strategically, who can really take that big vision and translate into those daily operations. Now, if I know this, I can then intentionally bring in different people to support my shadows, right, and my weaknesses, and to cover my gaps. But if I don't know that, then I will attempt to do it all, and we're not going to get anywhere, right? So self-awareness, building on this, I think, is also the most crucial thing. And again, building on kind of as well, understanding some of your triggers and understanding some of our kind of subconscious barriers and limitations. So self-awareness is really, really important. Right. So what else you would like us to look at? I think when we look at leadership, to kind of summarize, leaders are really those agents of change who are constantly renegotiating the contract between people and the business and aligning that to this wider social and economic context and the market in which the business operates to set that direction. And how well we are able to negotiate that contract will translate into people's well-being and performance. How well we are able to align individual needs and business needs, right? That's really the role of the leader. And when we look at the specific skills, it really falls into those three categories. So leading myself, so all of my self-awareness and own barriers, understanding my, being able to have my own emotional regulation, stress responses, resilience. Then we look at leading others. So your communication skills, your alignment, your project management, your ways of understanding other people and supporting them and adapting and adjusting your approach to the environment and the situation. And then leading the business, understanding the vision, the direction, the strategy, building that context and inspiring other people to come on board and build that vision on your behalf. And I'd like to finish with this note that, I think we talk about leaders as, this is the role that is given to you in terms of, specific career, job title. But actually, everyone can be a leader. And everyone is leading something in their lives, in their businesses, in their teams. So this is a question for you. What is it that you lead so that it translates to your own personal well-being and productivity, that it adds that value and contributes to the environment in which you operate? And if you think kind of my ultimate goal, I think. You know that, to be a leader, you need to have someone who follows you. And unless you have people who are following your vision, your mission, your goals, your values, your ambitions, then you may not be a leader. Maybe you're just managing and telling people what to do, but that's not really leading, right? So I think the best leaders are those who inspire people to believe in something that doesn't even exist yet. And they have a capacity to then bring people together to then that vision into reality. So I'd love for you to take that metaphor, that definition of leadership. And if you do need any help and support building your own leadership skills, if you would like your organization to build your leadership capacity, we do have some funded sponsorship options for organizations who have leaders who have never received any prior management and leadership training. So if you are one of those people, if you have teams in your organizations who have never received prior leadership training, please do get in touch, because we do have some ways to help and build leadership capacity through some of our programs this way. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your engagement and your comments. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good week. Bye there.